fine.
We're going to do this thing.
I would hope so.
I would love to, man.
I would hope so.
Respect, man.
All the best.
Respect.
All the
We'll do a
best.
quick picture.
Sure.
Yeah?
Let's get it.
A face-off.
No,
Just
no.
no, okay. No problem. No problem.
That's great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you, Tom.
I would love to have the honour one day. I would love to have the honour.
Maybe one day.
Hope so, man. All the best. All the best. How's everything?
Is it still a fair fight if it's against one of the most ducked heavyweights in the UFC? Tom Aspinall is an anime character come to life in terms of his sheer size and abilities. Standing at about 6'5" and weighing 251 pounds, Aspinall fights with a speed and movement that betrays his physique. He's a heavyweight that basically moves like a middleweight. So, it's no surprise that he's managed to break a few UFC records in his time, or that he's easily one of the most feared heavyweights on the roster. That's why today we'll be talking about the UFC's most well-rounded, forever interim champion, and how even the legendary real guys, not a single MMA fan wants to see John fight a washed-up Stipe. We all know in our hearts that it should have been Tom fighting to unify the heavyweight belt. Anyways, let's begin. Thomas Paul Aspinall was born in Salford, England on the 11th of April 1993 to English parents before moving to Atherton, Greater Manchester, where he grew up. Despite his English background, Aspinall is fluent in Polish, which has many guessing that he has Polish ancestry, especially when he blasted Marcin Tybura in Polish during a stare-down that has since morphed into a viral video. However, both his parents are English. His fluency in Polish comes from his family, as his wife is Polish. Aspinall has explained that Poland is near and dear to his heart because of his wife and their half-Polish children. While his wife and kids can be credited with this aspect of Aspinall, the fighter he has become comes from his other family, particularly his father, Andy Aspinall. Andy was the first to see his son as a combat sports prodigy and became Tom's first instructor in jiu-jitsu before introducing him to MMA. Aspinall first entered the world of combat sports at the tender age of 12 with the unwavering support of his father. Andy went as far as quitting a well-paying career in IT to be there for his son and see Tom all the way. If that wasn't the ultimate show of belief, Andy went a step further to open a school of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to ensure that his son had a place to focus on his training and development. So it comes as no surprise why Aspinall is deeply indebted to his father and dedicated his title belt to him, as Andy created the foundation for his son to become a superstar. During his early years in training, Aspinall spent the bulk of his time sampling techniques from different combat disciplines, including kickboxing, Olympic wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Thai boxing, submission wrestling, and boxing. It was after trying all these different disciplines that his father introduced him to mixed martial arts, which combined different aspects of other combat sports into one discipline. Aspinall bought into MMA quickly, especially after finding out that MMA fighters were professional athletes who worked full-time and got paid for their hard work. To him, it sounded like a great idea to get paid for what he liked doing. He began playing the local MMA scene, accepting 7 fights and coming away with a 5-2 record. Considering the other talents we've covered in the past, Aspinall's record isn't the best we've seen, but his fighting style was entertaining and fans loved him well. However, after his 7th bout, the Manchester man took a hiatus that nearly lasted 3 years. During this time, he picked up boxing and went pro. Bro was on a side quest. He only got to fight once as a pro boxer, but he made sure to leave his mark, knocking out his opponent in the first round to secure a debut victory. When it seemed like his little side quest was over, Aspinall returned to MMA. His previous MMA records and his boxing stint made him a sought-after talent. Many promotions were vying for his signature, including the UFC, but the Englishman turned down Dana White's promotion and signed a 5-match contract with Cage Warriors. While many would have snatched off White's arm at the first sign of a contract, Aspinall was determined to want to be another fighter on the UFC's roster. He wanted to be a showstopper. By 2020, Aspinall put pen to paper for the biggest MMA promotion outfit and immediately went to work. His debut fight was initially slated for the 21st of March 2020 at UFC Fight Night, Woodley vs Edwards, and his opponent was Rafael Pessoa. However, Pessoa suffered an injury and was replaced by Jake Collier. Even then, the fight failed to happen due to pandemic regulations. Nonetheless, finished the fight in the first round, winning by technical knockout, a victory that earned him the Performance of the Night prize.
This is just my dream, you know what I mean? One day I'm going to be UFC heavyweight champion of the world. I always seen it in my mind.
His second fight was against Sergey Spivak on the 11th of October of the same year at UFC Fight Night, Moraes versus Sandhagen. Surprisingly, his opponent withdrew from the fight without stating any reasons, so another newbie, Alan Bordeaux, was brought on to face the behemoth of an Englishman. Unfortunately for Bordeaux, a first-round TKO was in his future. Fast forward to the 20th of February 2021, at UFC Fight Night, Blades vs Lewis, and Aspinall was drawn to face Andrei Arlovski. Unlike his first two fights, this one lasted past the first round. But Aspinall wasn't about to let it tarry, so he tied it up in the second round, forcing Arlovski out of the game by submission. That also earned him the Performance of the Night prize. By September, Aspinall was drawn to face Sergey Pavlovich at UFC Fight Night 191. Then, in a rehashing of his first two fights, the Englishman's fighter had to be changed. Pavlovich ran into visa problems that made him miss the tight, so Sergey Spivak was brought in as his replacement. It felt like Spivak's beatdown was divinely ordained, since escaping Aspinall once didn't save him from being drawn against the ladder again. Aspinall sent his opponent to the cleaners with his third TKO in the first round and claimed yet another Performance of the Night bonus award. His fourth fight came in January 2022 when he faced off against Alexander Volkov. The bout once again ended in the first round after Aspinall submitted his opponent with a straight armbar. Yet another Performance of the Night prize followed the Englishman home. Aspinall's record in the UFC was now 4-0, and he had broken other records too, such as the shortest average fight time in UFC history, with his matches lasting 2 minutes and 10 seconds on average.
Listen people, I've been telling everybody all week, I'm born for this, I'm ready!
The Englishman seemed unstoppable at this point. Then, the worst happened. With 4 wins in 4 fights under his belt, Aspinall went into his 5th with all the confidence of the juggernaut. If he won this match, he was on course for a title shot. The Englishman was drawn to face Curtis Blades at a sold-out show at the O2 Arena in London. He was home. Where better to show how far he'd come than in his motherland? Around 13 seconds into the first round of laps to the canvas, clutching their knee and bringing the fight to a premature end. Only it wasn't the American writhing on the canvas, but Aspinall. The Brit attempted a kick but wound up tearing his medial collateral ligament and suffering damage in his meniscus and anterior cruciate ligament. He was rushed to surgery immediately and stayed out of the Octagon for a year due to recovery. Aspinall described the incident and the missed action as one of the lowest points of his life. However, after returning to the Octagon, he was more than eager to make up for lost time. His first match against Marcin Tybura ended in a victory. Aspinall dispatched the pole in 73 seconds.
This is a whole new version of me. I'm not going to say that I'm back because I'm different now. I'm just different than what I was last year. My mind's different, my body's different, and I'm going all the way.
This victory shot Aspinall near the top of the heavyweight charts and, in possible contention, got a title shot. 2 weeks prior to then champions John Jones's fight with Stipe Miocic, the former pulled out due to a pectoral injury. This created a vacuum for an interim UFC heavyweight championship title holder. Aspinall was given 14 days to prepare for this title match against Sergey Pavlovich. Despite the short timeline, the Brit did not turn it down or withdraw. During the second round of the bout, he separated Pavlovich from his consciousness and was declared the winner, an unbelievable return for Aspinall. What made this victory even sweeter was getting to defend his title against an old foe, Curtis Blades. This time, Aspinall put Blades to sleep to retain his title. There's no beating about the bush with this. Tom Aspinall is an unstoppable menace in the Octagon. He's probably the most well-rounded heavyweight we've seen since John Jones. But why? His imposing physique and crazy unusual speed make for a deadly combination that both intimidates and surprises opponents. Let's break that down further. At 250 pounds, the Brit is not a small heavyweight. There's also the possibility that he could cut weight to 205 pounds, which would make him even faster. Slap all that weight onto a 6'5" frame, then pair it with a frightening reach and hand speed, and you have a literal juggernaut who forces his opponents onto the back foot from the moment the bell goes and goes for the kill very early. But Aspinall isn't a one-trick pony fighter that just relies on size. He knows that being that big also makes him a harder to miss target. So he fights smartly by maintaining a preferred distance. Then, he begins closing down on opponents and cutting down their space with quick jabs masquerading between feints and level changes. If that doesn't work, Aspinall will take his jab to the body and dig low kicks as his opponents come within distance. Overall, Aspinall's feints are more than the average fighter in his weight class. His jabs and pressing are all distractions as he seeks an opening. So, when opponents fire back, he stands his ground and has a right hand or check hook waiting to greet them. In the event that he goes up against a more aggressive opponent, Aspinall is a different beast and is more than delighted to start the exchange. It doesn't help the opponents that his feints are much harder to detect given his blistering hand speed. And when he does find an opening, he almost always finds the target and lines up the money shot with a jab. When backed into a close quarter fight, Aspinall has proven to be a very dangerous man. Proof of this is in his first UFC match against Collier. Despite being larger than the Brit, Aspinall stunned Collier with a well-timed knee to the gut. Before the American could recover and respond, Aspinall put him to sleep with a 1-2 down the pipe. The Brit repeated the feat against Sergey Spivak again when he turned his takedown defense into offense. Given that Spivak is a skilled wrestler, Aspinall did not underestimate him, denying his opponent any opportunity to clinch. And when Spivak attempted to push through, Aspinall was waiting to feed him an elbow and a knee to put the Moldovan out of commission. Bar injury and disqualification for illegal elbows, Tom Aspinall's only other loss came via a heel hook submission by Stuart Austin in 2015, long before he came to the UFC. As it stands, his record is 8-1. The UFC seems to be dragging its feet, keeping him with that interim belt for God knows how long. If the matchmakers are playing their cards right, they might be waiting for John Jones to retire after his fight with Stipe. Then, we could see a super heavyweight showdown between Tom and Alex Pereira. What do you guys think will happen? Drop your thoughts in the comments and I'll catch you in the next video.